3,500 sailors and Marines aboard the USS Tripoli arrived at the U.S. Central Command area in the Middle East region over the weekend. U.S. forces are reporting major progress against Iranian naval vessels. Lucas Tomlinson's live at the White House with more on all that. Hi, Lucas.
Good afternoon, Mike. From the beginning, the White House said this war will last 4 to 6 weeks. It's now past the 1-month mark. And Senator Tom Cotton says these strikes will continue until the regime is completely destroyed.
The end game has been clear from the very beginning. This revolutionary regime is going to be defanged and neutered. It will no longer be able to hold the civilized world at risk. It will no longer be able to threaten American troops and our friends in Israel and the Arab nations in the region.
Now, with one aircraft carrier now out of the fight with Ford in Croatia and likely heading home, flight operations continue aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Here's a Super Hornet from VFA 41. The Black Ace is preparing to launch. Call sign dealer. There have been some skepticism from lawmakers on Capitol Hill about the war, some asking why Iran is still able to be launching dozens of drones and ballistic missiles each day 1 month into this war, weeks after the Pentagon claimed 90% have been destroyed. Here's Adam Smith on Fox News Sunday.
The biggest part of the problem is the military campaign isn't working either. Iran doesn't have any less nuclear material now than they did when this started. They still have ballistic missiles. They still have drone capability. They now have shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
Now, should President Trump need a ground force option in addition to the immediate response force launched from Fort Bragg aboard the 82nd Airborne Division, Marines aboard the USS Tripoli have now arrived in the Arabian Sea with dozens of Super Stallions and Ospreys aboard. Some of those 2,000 Marines could spin up and launch an operation, perhaps take one of Iran's islands in the Persian Gulf to use as leverage to get the Strait of Hormuz opened. Some Republicans sound wary about sending in the Marines.
Well, that is a different story. We've got to be able to know what the objectives are and what they're actually carrying out. So to be very clear on this, the worst thing that can happen is to be able to have this kind of conflict start and to not end it, to leave it undone.
Now, the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush is ready to set sail in the next few days from Norfolk. She will relieve Ford. The first airstrikes against ISIS back in 2014 were from this aircraft carrier. Also, the first jet to shoot down an enemy aircraft in the ISIS war in 2017 was from this aircraft carrier, the George H.W. Bush. Also, President Trump visited the carrier back in October to celebrate the Navy's 250th birthday. Fox was on board as well, Mike.
Lucas Tomlinson, just back from doing yeoman's work in the Middle East. Great to see you, Lucas. Thanks a lot. New video from the Israeli Defense Forces shows the elimination of Hezbollah terrorists as they attempted to detonate an explosive device and located dozens of weapons in southern Lebanon. As an IDF spokesperson sends a warning to the terror group about using ambulances for terror purposes. U.S. Central Command sharing these photos this morning of Navy FA-18 Super Hornets on the USS Abraham Lincoln preparing for a nighttime combat mission back on March 25th. Jonathan Hunt is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Mike. A ground operation by U.S. forces might be coming, and it might be coming soon. But in the meantime, the air war is being prosecuted day after day, night after night. CENTCOM releasing new video today of the kind of targets they are attacking in Iran. Rocket launchers, for instance, military factories, manufacturing factories, and other regime targets. In the meantime, the USS Tripoli, as Lucas was just saying, is now in the region on board some 2,500 Marines who could be the spearhead of any boots going on to Iranian ground. The Iranian military says they are ready for whatever the U.S. has in mind. A military spokesman in Tehran issuing what amounted to a dire warning to the United States. Listen here.
We announced that the warriors of Islam have been waiting for such actions for a long time to prove that aggression and occupation will not result in anything other than the humiliating captivity and dismemberment and disappearance of the aggressors. And American commanders and soldiers will become good food for the sharks of the Persian Gulf.
And Iran continues its missile and drone attacks. This video from southern Israel today, a ballistic missile slamming into what we understand to be some sort of chemical factory. And you can see the huge plume of smoke from that. Residents in the nearby area were told to keep their windows closed and their air conditioning turned off because of those toxic fumes. In the meantime, we also heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu here in Israel today, who said that Israeli forces in their northern front are going to extend what he called the security zone into southern Lebanon. He calls it a security zone. Many others call it an invasion. Mike?
Jonathan Hunt, thanks very much. For more now on this, let's bring in Foreign Desk Editor-In-Chief Lisa Daftari. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you.
So here we are about a month into this conflict against the Iranian regime. Where are we in your assessment?
Well, we could talk about the military war. We could talk about the narrative war that we're watching here in the United States. Look, in terms of the military war, we understand from Donald Trump, from Marco Rubio, and from Bibi Netanyahu that it is going not only according to plan, but ahead of schedule with the listed intentions or the goals that they had in mind militarily. Their Navy is degraded, their communication systems degraded, we see their Air Force degraded, missile program very much degraded, and of course their nuclear program further degraded from the 12-day war that we saw in June. Now, have we seen full regime collapse or regime change? No. And really, I know people are losing patience on this war. We're 4 weeks in, nobody really wants a war. So Donald Trump at this moment has a choice. Either he will finish the job, as people say, and really bring this military operation to this final war where we won't have to kick the can down the road and have multiple wars in the future to degrade them again, or he will have to kind of squander the advancements that we've had thus far and enter into an insufficient deal with a duplicitous regime that will certainly not keep their word when it comes to these kinds of deals, the JCPOA being a great example of that. So right now, I mean, it's really maybe a halftime or even further than that in terms of the goals that they have achieved. But there is definitely a decision to make in terms of escalation. And as you see, the theater is increasing in the Middle East and not decreasing at the moment.
Is there a leader in Iran that would be a huge upgrade from the current regime we've been dealing with over the last 47 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, when we talk about regime change, it cannot come from within this regime. Any member of this regime would be the same. The centrifuges would continue to spin, the ballistic missiles would continue to pile up, they would continue to fund proxies, and they would continue to kill innocent Iranians at home. So that would only be a personnel change. When we talk about regime change, we're talking about democracy, secularism, all the things that thousands of Iranians have given up their lives for, have been killed over 47 years, and more recently in January, where 30 to 40,000 of them were killed, in order to tell the world that they will not settle for any reform within this regime, any leadership change within this regime, but there has to be a collapse of the regime. What we do here on the streets of Iran, and of course in the expatriate community here, is Reza Pahlavi. He is the son of the former Shah of Iran. They see him as someone who is now an outsider. They see him as somebody who can transition them into a secular and free Iran and bring them to free elections so that they can then determine their future.
Do you believe the United States and Israel are closely aligned on the same page in terms of the military operation?
It's a great question. I actually recently asked the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Yechiel Leiter, about that, and he said they have always been on the same page. At this very moment, they are on the same page as well. Look, the bottom line is this. For the United States, we know what their strategic imperative is. This regime cannot have nuclear weapons. What's the strategic imperative for Israel? It's an existential threat. They will take Israel off the map. So when you look at what our interests are, of course, we are aligned in degrading this regime so that it is no longer a threat to the Iranian people, to Israel, to the region, the Middle East. We're seeing the other moderate Arab states brought into this war, and of course, to the United States. It is a global threat. And of course, when we look at these two, Israel and the United States being the two global powers that can and have stepped up to fight this boogeyman who is a global threat, then we understand that they are certainly aligned, and it will take time and of course, a lot of will to take this forward.
Amen. Lisa Daftari, fascinating analysis. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.